So I'm actually staff, and so I'm not limited to the 2 minutes, I believe. So I brought some paperwork. I'm going to read it to Ray. So settle in. So actually, I'm here on behalf of Commander Miles, and he usually speaks on behalf of this ordinance. He's involved in the working group. And you've heard the bullet points from the sheriff's office as far as what we're opposed to and where we're at with that. So I'll talk a little bit on that, and then I'll just open it to questions. And this is somewhat my opinion of where we're at on these bullet points. Back before we had an ordinance, we had a problem with dispensaries in unincorporated Alameda County. We had, I think, 9, and there was a lot of criminal activity that was associated to those. So through the public process and through everyone getting involved, we drafted an ordinance, and we implemented an ordinance, and we worked on amending an ordinance. And with that, we established two dispensaries that have been operating. And I believe they've been operating very well. The ordinance that actually came out of that was fairly restrictive, fairly comprehensive, and limited to the 2. Bob Swanson was requesting information on calls for service to those dispensaries, tell us about the crime that's occurring in and around those dispensaries. And although we have in the past had some criminal activity associated to those, like a burglary and some other things, as a whole, the dispensaries are not producing calls for service that are of a concern to the sheriff's office. They're very low. We investigate them on an annual basis. We've never had any issues with how they're operating. So I think that's a testament to the ordinance that we have on the books right now. Moving forward with this amendments to this, I believe they're a result of the new legislation that's coming on the books of the state. And it's the Medical Cannabis Regulation and Safety Act, which establishes a comprehensive framework to license and regulate commercial medical cannabis cultivation, manufacture, distribution, transportation, sales, and testing. And the gentleman in the back said it very eloquently about what the state is going to implement as far as regulations to track this stuff. The cultivation of marijuana for profit, and how is it regulated? How is it tested? How is it transported? There's a whole slew of regulation that's going to be incorporated into that. So right now, the transportation of marijuana and the cultivation of marijuana for profit is not legal. And the state says we're gonna allow this, but it's going to take us until 2018 until we roll this out, until we're actually ready to implement this program through permitting, licensing, so on and so forth. So the state is saying this: we're going to provide all of this, but we don't have it right now. And what we have with the amendments, what we're looking at right now, from my perspective, is this is an industry based push to amend this ordinance, not necessarily from the community as far as a need basis, but it's the industry pushing this. And do we want to get out ahead of state regulation by almost 2 years, where they're going to establish all of these procedures so that we can have a pilot program, so that we can increase the number of dispensaries, and so that we can change our ordinance, the face of our ordinance that I think we've shown over the last many years is working. So that's it in a nutshell. I don't think there's a debate. I don't think that there's a debate whether or not there's a medical or a need for cannabis. That has gone back and forth over the years for the last far more than 20 years. And I think that is kind of a played out argument, with whether you agree with it or not. I don't think that's a valid argument for what we're looking at right now for this amending this ordinance. Is whether or not there's a need for additional dispensaries and access to marijuana in unincorporated Alameda County, and does the community that lives here, do they want that? So one thing I am very happy about is that this is being vetted in the public process like any other ordinance or amendments to ordinance, so that everybody, it's very polarized, as you can see, and everybody's opinion gets to be heard, and everyone gets to weigh in on it. And at the end of the day, the Board of Supervisors are going to look at this and say, this is what we want, this is why, and this is what we've done to get there. So, any questions for me?
Yes, I have a question, sir. So how do you feel about the shift in the way this ordinance is written as far as taking the responsibility of the permitting out of the sheriff's office and moving it to a CDA director?
So I wasn't involved in that conversation. But I know that with cultivation, with additional land use issues, that the CDA is going to be an important component of that. The sheriff's office is not removed from that process, so we're going to be involved in that. I think very intrinsically, we're going to work on it together. But it's just the decision had to be made, who's going to take the lead on it, and that decision was made outside of I think my input or involved in that conversation. But we are moving forward. We will be involved in that process, as a partnership.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the sergeant?
Let me see.
Okay.
I just have one. When they talked about increased security and things like that around these cannabis clubs, how many cops did you guys add?
How many what?
How many officers were added for the areas around here? They said that the security improved and crime went down and things like that.
And that's from what? Quoting from what? I think that was the LAPD or some other.
Yeah, and I was just wondering, somebody else said that the crimes dropped around these cannabis clubs, not just for just wondering.
So I will speak on statistics. I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of statistics. I think you can look at those statistics and you can make them say what you want by manipulating neighborhoods and geographical areas. And I think there was a comment about the zones being redistricted to and there was a comment about to get supervisors reelected. Well, there's always something that can be manipulated to be able to benefit you in the form of statistics and whatnot. So, I mean, as far as crime occurring in and around our dispensaries, we do not see a crime problem in and around our 2 dispensaries.
I guess I do have a question. You made a comment that we're 2 years in advance of RSA implementation. Are we?
So I believe the date is sometime in 2018 that they anticipate the licensing, permitting, and on the state level, it being implemented, yes.
Oh, okay.
So I have a question, and I'm not sure which one of you can answer this. So when the state is going to hand down its decision on how this will be handled, and we have X, Y, Z in place, what trumps what? And if we didn't have anything in place, is it going to immediately change our regulations? How is this actually going to work? Because I've gotten so many mixed answers on this.
So that might be an answer or a question for county council.
Okay.
I have my opinion, but it may not be accurate.
Okay.